The ethos of our liberation struggle was about the means of production and also to make democracy alive. The one man, one voter franchise. Today we are faced by the challenge to either watch this dream disappear into thin air or to join hands together across the political divide and call out the draft delimitation report by ZEC. The People's Party was formed to complete the unfinished business of the liberation struggle. Our team analyzed the 2020 ZEC delimitation report following its submission to the President of the country and further to the Parliament of Zimbabwe. We focused on one, whether the process was compliant with Section 161 of the Constitution of Zimbabwe. 2, whether the approach and formula used by ZEC is the most appropriate and also speaking to the Constitution. 3, whether the new boundaries reflect the true and actual distribution of national voter contribution. And number 4, whether households and communities in the country were properly delimited without leaving registered voters out of the boundaries. In doing this exercise, these were our findings. 1, the process was exclusionary, as it completely left out certain urban communities outside the delimited wards and constituencies. Thousands of urban voters do not belong to any ward or constituency, and therefore their rights to being so to such were stripped. Delimitation approach used by ZEC reduced Zimbabweans to a provincial level as opposed to the national level, based on national voter population distribution, thus violating Section 161(2) of the Constitution. The formula used is a misinterpretation of Section 161(3) and 6 of the Constitution, resulting in an incorrect delimitation outcome. Delimitation report refuses to accept national population changing trends, which are reflecting a more urban population in certain regions of the country. Delimitation process is conservative as it ignores national voter population distribution in favor of regional balancing and maintaining same number of constituencies per province. Some wards are overlapping into each other, resulting in a registered voters belonging to 2 wards at the same time. Scattering of registered voters from high populous districts to less populous areas has suppressed a high number of voters and therefore artificially erasing the creation of deserving constituencies. Number 8, increase in the parliamentary constituencies I will read that again. Increasing in parliamentary constituencies in references by an increase in wards in the same province or municipality. The first unit of increase should be the ward and before the creation of a new wards in some areas like, for example, in Harare. This has resulted in the suppression of the increase in parliamentary constituencies. Our team continues to analyze not just the delimitation report, but all electoral issues, and we will continue to update the nation as we carry on to post-colonial struggle to fully democratize Zimbabwe. Our Secretary for Research and Policy, Dr. Julius Msevenzi, with me here, is going to take you through on more detailed analysis of the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All protocol observed. I think as the Chairman has already highlighted the key issues that were raised by our own analysis of the ZEC report, but possibly going into the details of what the Chairman has raised. In our analysis of the ZEC report, we observed that ZEC deliberately ignored analyzing or putting to the picture or giving Zimbabwe a true picture of how the population trends have changed in Zimbabwe. But in view of analyzing the previous delimitation report of 2007, right? So there is a need to compare in terms of if the country had 5.6 million people in 2007 when the country was delimited then, how much more have we gained in terms of the total number of registered voters in the country? That warrants the need to change the boundaries. ZEC ignored that. Was that baseline information was going to inform the country in terms of which areas are going to benefit in terms of having the increased number of wards or increased number of constituencies, or which provinces or regions are going to lose in terms of number of constituencies. We did that as the MDC, province by province, and we observed that based on their figures, ZEC figures, Bulawayo province had lost the total number of voters by 15.6%. In terms of figures, it's about 42,521. It means the total number of registered voters in Bulawayo went down by 15.6%. To the contrary, Harare gained or had an increase of about 185,624 new registered voters, giving a 24.2% increase, right? And then Manikali had a 4% increase. Mashonaland Central had a 9.8 increase in voter population. Mashonaland East 2.7% increase. Mashonaland West had a 13.4% increase. Masvingo had a 13.4% decrease in total voter population. And this will help us in understanding why are we criticizing maintaining the same number of constituencies in Masvingo, and yet they lost about 13.4% of voter population. Mid-North lost about 1.4%. Matebeleland South lost by about 27.8%. Midlands was almost at the same level. It maintained, it gained by 3.1%, and national total increase of voter population increased by 3.4%, which is about around 200,000 registered voters. So this information was never given by ZEC, but it was important to point in terms of which areas are likely to gain in terms of the number of constituencies. The chairman has given that the whole approach used by ZEC was a bit defective. Where ZEC is supposed to take or to analyze or to take Zimbabwe as a unit or Zimbabwe as a whole, they did that at the first stage of their formula, where they say to come up with an average of how many people should we get in the whole country per each constituency. They simply said the total number of registered voters in the whole country divided by 210 constituencies, which are already guaranteed in the Constitution. So they came up with 27,640 registered voters per constituency. right? And the Constitution says all the constituencies in the whole country should have almost an equal number, right? So that was their first stage of their formula. At the second stage, where they're supposed to say, for us to get a total number of constituencies in Masvingo province, what should we do? They were supposed to take the 27,640, their average figure that they had gotten when they divided the whole country by 210, and then divide the total number of registered voters in each province by 27,000 for them to be in a position to get total number of constituencies in each province. They did not do that. At that stage, they simply said, okay, Masvingo province has 632,000 registered voters. Therefore, let us divide this number by the number of constituencies, which was a wrong formula they used, right? So I mean to say, the way they divided the total number of registered voters in Masvingo by the total number of constituencies existing already actually misinformed the whole nation, actually produced an incorrect result. Why am I saying so? If they were going to divide 632,000 by 27,640, they were going to get 23 constituencies. I mean to say, in line with the decrease in the total number of registered voters in Masvingo province is supposed to lose 3 constituencies. But ZEC used a conservative approach, as said earlier, which was meant to maintain the same number of constituencies, despite the fact that the province has lost quite a number of registered voters. This actually means that Harare province, which had gained in terms of numbers, Marsh West, March Central, and Manicaland, for example, these provinces had gained in terms of the total number of registered voters. They were not given what they deserved. Their numbers were suppressed because ZEC wanted to maintain the same number of constituencies in Masvingo, Mat South, Mat North, and to some extent, Bulawayo. So I mean to say, the losing provinces in terms of total registered voters remained with the same number of constituencies, which is actually incorrect as far as we are concerned in terms of analyzing the approach used by ZEC. This wrong formula used by ZEC means that if you compare just 2 provinces, Masvingo and Marsh West, or Masvingo and Manicaland. For example, Masvingo, I said it has 632,000 registered voters. It has 26 constituencies. Manicaland province has 738,000 registered voters. It still has the same number as Masvingo, 26 constituencies, right? And if you compare the two, there is a variance or a difference of over 100,000 registered voters between the two, but they have the same number of constituencies. Meaning to say, Manicaland somewhere, somehow, right, there's high numbers, but being denied having an increase in the total number of constituencies. According to our calculation, Manicaland province was supposed to have an extra constituency to make them 27. Same as Mashonaland West. The difference between Masvingo and Marsh West is about 30,000 people. But Mashonaland West remains with the 22 constituencies. But it has more people, registered voters. Even if you go back to the National Census Provisional Report, it tells you that today, as we speak, Mashonaland West is the second most populous province in the country, behind Harare. But Masvingo somewhere, somehow, was given the prominence of having more constituencies, and yet the total number of registered voters have been or are decreasing. So according to on calculation, Mashonaland West should have an extra number of 2 constituencies or 2 more constituencies. So using this formula that I've given earlier on, that just divide the total number of registered voters per province by the average of 27,640, you'll get exactly 210 constituencies throughout the whole country. But the figures per province simply change. I'm going to say Marsh Central is going to gain 1 to make them 19. Manicaland it gains 1 to make them 27. Harare will have an increase by 5 to make them 34, but was given 1 constituency, which was a bit erroneous. The misinterpretation of the Constitution, particularly 161.6, which talks about the variance. The variance that ZEC was talking about, the Constitution says all the 210 constituencies in the country should have an equal number of registered voters. I mean to say most of them should be around 27,640 registered voters, right? But you find out that according to the ZEC report, some constituencies are as low as 22, some are as high as 33,000, right? The results, these figures by ZEC are a product of an error or a misinterpretation of section 161.6 of the Constitution. So this error, I think many stakeholders have talked about this, and exactly we found the same. Of course, other stakeholders may not have calculated exactly in terms of how did you arrive to the average figure of saying at a minimum, each constituency is supposed to have about 24,000 plus registered voters, right? At most, those constituencies at a higher figure should be around 30,000. I want to say, you take the average figure of 27,640 that ZEC had given, then you calculate a 20% variance going down and going up. Of course, this is now mathematics. But the calculation, I think, was agreed by different stakeholders from different angles, and the result remains the same. But ZEC gave us an incorrect figure of a minimum of 22, which is wrong, and a high maximum of 33, which is again wrong. And this distorted the distribution of constituencies and wards in the country. So, in terms of this misinterpretation, a lot was distorted. And some of the errors that were made down there by ZEC were as a result of this misinterpretation. Because they tried to change boundaries to fit into their misinterpretation of the formula or of this section 1.1, 161.6. When they were trying to make sure that things work out, they were now displacing people, changing boundaries in a manner that was not really acceptable or appropriate. We also observed that ZEC has actually delimited the whole country, whether it's deliberate or not. There are some areas or communities that were left out. The boundaries are not recognizing those communities or those areas. What we did is we simply sampled Bulawayo as a province. And we also did Harare, right? There are some suburbs. At a minimum, a suburb, one community may have, or one settlement may have about 500 to 700 households that were left out by the boundaries by ZEC. I mean to say, these people don't belong to any ward, they don't belong to any constituents. And of course, some people were asking, where Magazwana they used GPS. We also did the same, trying to find the exact coordinates of these delimited wards and constituencies. This is an area of view, but of course, some may not see from that far. But if you look at it, if you see these areas in between, right? These ones. These are communities left out. They don't belong to any ward. They don't belong to any constituency. So this is an area of view. But if you go down further and try to analyze at a closer, yes, this one is better. these are the total number of constituencies in Bulawayo, right? If you look at all of them, sorry, the picture might be a bit small. So there are areas in between different constituencies, right? We show that these people don't belong to. For example, between Cowdrey Park and Bulawayo North and Emakanden constituencies, or Luveve, say, there is a huge area, right, full of settlements, but not belong to any. This is clearly evidence showing that some people were being thrown out. What we don't know is that whether these people are registered or not, but their communities or settlements of residents are not in either Ward A or Ward B. And down at the ward level, it's again shown here, where we are saying between Ward 16 of Bulawayo and Ward 29, Ward 11, there is a huge settlement not belonging to any. This is part of the evidence. Maybe say there are some people who were thrown out, or they are just somewhere, but can't be reflected on the ground physically. Where do they belong? This made us also question one aspect that we are still finding an answer. If Bulawayo has lost the total number of its registered voters by about 15.6, are these people not belonging to any ward or constituency part of those who are said to have decreased? Are they also counted in the current total number of people in Bulawayo? We are yet to find out this, but we are now questioning this. Possibly where we are saying Bulawayo is lost, Bulawayo would have its only people as previously, or would have increased, but this process by ZEC would have thrown out other people, and the province appears as if it has lost a number of registered voters in the province. There is also an unexplained overlapping of boundaries between wards. This is mainly found where, yes, at the ward level, where Ward 16 or say Ward 10 of Bulawayo is overlapping into Ward 2, or Ward 2 is overlapping into Ward 10. What does that mean? It means that there are people who are belonging to two wards, right? This household belongs to Ward 2. It also belongs to Ward 10 of Bulawayo. So when voting, where do these people vote at? Do they vote in Ward 2 or do they vote in Ward 10? Right? This picture shows all those small areas that are showing red color, showing the areas of interface where two wards are overlapping into each other. So these people, I don't know, they've got two identities. They belong to two wards. That's one other unexplained component in the ZEC report. There is the issue of disproportionate number of polling stations in some wards, particularly in wards with high populations. For example, we just picked one sample of Ward 41 of Harare West constituency in Harare, and Pelandaba, Ward 20, it's Ward 20, Pelandaba constituency in Bulawayo. Just looking at the voter population, registered voters in each ward, Ward 41 of Harare has 18,473 registered voters. Ward 20 of Bulawayo has 7,478 registered voters. But if we compare the total number of constituencies in these, both of them do have 12 polling stations. So the ward in Bulawayo with 7,000 registered voters has 12 polling stations. The ward in Harare with 18,473 has 12 polling stations. Meaning to say, whether it's deliberate or not, there is the intention of congesting Ward 41 of Harare on the voting day. Because you are allocating them 12 voting polling stations, and you are talking about 18,000, almost 3 times the same number of a similar ward, an urban ward in Bulawayo. So there is an intention by ZEC somehow of limiting polling stations in other areas and congesting, with the intention of congesting these on the voting day. There's another problem of displacement of wards. And this is again throughout the whole country, where wards for a particular constituency are being displaced. Let me give you two examples. For example, in Nyanga, Manicaland province, Ward 8 is in Nyanga North, right? But the report by ZEC has removed Ward 8, which is Nyanga North, kumsoro we Nyanga town. The Variance belong to Nyanga South, right? And then Nyanga North was given Ward 27, which is part of Nyanga, but it is at the border of Nyanga and Mutas. So for people in Nyanga North, right, to visit this ward, they have to cut across the road, they have to pass through a whole constituency for them to reach their ward 27, which is part of Nyanga North, but it's somewhere down border with Mutasa district. That's one example. A second example is Bindura constituency. We have a problem where ZEC was trying to scatter people or scatter registered voters. The intention again was not to create new constituencies. And I've said that, for example, in my central was supposed to have an extra constituency. So ZEC in this case, Bindura Urban has a population according to census of 60,000 people. 25,000 are registered voters in Bindura. It means it qualifies to become an urban constituency. But ZEC is defying that. Instead, ZEC is ruralizing Bindura, becomes a rural constituency. If you look at that constituency, it's called Bindura North. In Bindura North, there are 8 constituencies rural and 12 constituencies urban. The rural constituencies are north of Bindura urban. So what ZEC has done is they've taken, out of the 8, they've taken 5 constituencies with an average of 3,000 registered voters each. They've given 3 wards to Mazoe Central. They've given 2 wards to Shamba district, right? And they've given 1 ward, which is Ward 2 of Bindura, to Mount Darren West, where I come from. For you to travel from Mount Darren West to Bindura, you have to pass through Mount Darren South. You have to pass through Shamba North District for you to be in Bindura. But Bindura has donated a ward of 3,000 registered voters to Mount Darren West. It doesn't make sense. The concern is clear that you have to also consider the physical developments in a particular area, geographical issues such as rivers, mountains, and so forth. And there is a huge river in between, Ruya River. So for you to cross from Mount Darren West, you cross Ruya River, which is a huge river, right? You get into Mount Darren South, then Shamba North, then to Bindura. But Bindura has donated a ward to Mount Darren West, which is actually unimaginable, because how do people travel? And why would you want to donate such wards to far away constituencies? It is unreasonable. It is very difficult to think of. And this is actually found across the whole country. In Masvingo, for example, as I said earlier on, that was supposed to lose 3 constituencies. If you look at the list of constituencies in Masvingo right now, there are 2 Chirezi central constituencies. If you remove it, it means it remains with 25. So, but on the list, it remains with 26. There's a duplication of constituencies. And if you look at it, the constituencies do have different total number of registered voters. And the rest of Masvingo province is sitting at a minimum, the so-called minimum by ZEC of 22,000, which according to the the appropriate formula, it is below the accepted minimum, the minimum number, which is 24,000 per constituency. So I'm going to say the rest of Masvingo is sitting at a wrong minimum number of total registered voters per constituency. And possibly by reducing that number, they're trying to re-engineer the process of maintaining the same total number of constituencies. There is one other aspect where ZEC does not have a formula or an average total number of what do we call a ward. A ward in Zimbabwe can have any figure. It doesn't have an average figure. The smallest ward, according to analysis in Zimbabwe right now, is 600 people in Masvingo Central in Mvurwi Township. And the biggest ward in Zimbabwe is in Harare with 18,000. So according to ZEC, what is the average size of a ward in Zimbabwe? Be it urban or rural. There is no formula to determine that. As a result, a councillor is a councillor. Whether you are leading 600 people, another one is leading 18,000. But it doesn't make sense because it also affects development, right? One councillor, anochera maboro 3 to save 600 people, atopedza is done. But the one with 18,000 registered voters in one ward, how many balls does that councillor need? That's a challenge. And ZEC does not come up with an average figure for a ward. And that is very much problematic. For Harare, we said that Harare is an increase of over 185,000 people, the whole province. They have increased the total number of constituencies by 1. But there is no ward that was created. Meaning to say, even in the next 10 years, population increase will continue. And after 10 years, Harare will end up having about 30,000 people per ward because ZEC refused to create new wards. There is no law in Zimbabwe that says you can't create new wards, except in constituencies. The constitution is clear that constituencies will remain 210, but there is no interest that says our wards should remain 1,558. And under the most circumstances, the number of wards actually have increased because Mvurwi Township has 3 new wards, right? 3 new wards of 690 people, and Harare denied a chance to have an increase. But according to our own calculation, Harare should have an increase of 10 new wards to give a total of 56 wards in Harare. But rather, ZEC has actually reduced it. It has donated 1 ward of Harare East to Goromonzi district. While the 46 has been donated to Goromonzi district, Harare has gone down in terms of the number of wards, which we understand or now know that it's not fair. ZEC is trying to suppress the number of wards and congest our wards by having a high number of people in each ward. I think I'll end here. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you. A rather unorthodox approach. Before I invite questions, I would like to apologize for 2 things. Number 1, starting late. And secondly, one of our main speakers was not able to make it, President Douglas Mwonzora, because he's been called on some very important national duty. So he was not able to be with us. That's the reason why we have these 2 gentlemen here before you. And again, before I invite questions, I would like just to add a little bit that we are going to share with you the maps for your disposal in more clarity on the issues that were raised as anomalies. And these maps are standard maps that were extracted from enterprise softwares, one of them being Quantum GIS, the other one ARC 150. This is the industry standard worldwide and the ones that are being used currently by the Surveyor General. So this is just to add on the maps that are going to be shared with you. So I will invite the first round of questions, if any. Maybe you can start by your name and your media house.
All right. Let me answer the first one on the recommendations. Our recommendations are not many. The first one is that we completely reject this report as the MDC, that the report does not speak to what is reflected in the country in terms of population distribution. The formula used is wrong. The outcome is wrong. Therefore, we are rejecting the report, and our recommendation is that ZEC should have a restart of the whole process. We know that it's not an easy one, but they have to restart the process. And let me add that the MDC is also not going to use the 2007, 2008 boundaries. They are obsolete, they've outlived their tenure, and they don't reflect the true distribution of population in Zimbabwe anymore in terms of voters. I know there might be another question to say, Mr. Chairman, if ZEC is going to restart, what happens? This question has been asked in many quarters. Are you petitioning ZEC? Our report was incorporated into the Parliamentary Ad Hoc Committee, well accepted, and if you read that Ad Hoc Committee report, find that some of these issues are part of that report. So it was incorporated. We made presentations last week, and the report is already part of the country's final report that rejects it. Mr. Chairman, you'll come after me. Let me give you an example of the Kenyan experience. It took Kenya 2 years for them to come up with the final product. So if it took Kenya for them to come up with the final product for their most recent election, what do you think what time Zimbabwe will need to do the same process? Of course, Kenya is big, but do you think we may need less than 1 year? Do you think we may need 6 months? It's not possible, because this process requires a lot of input, requires a lot of resources. So given the remaining period towards elections, it may not be possible. It may not be possible. No, we can't comment about elections, Mr. Chairman. I'm not so sure if you can come in.
Okay, thank you. The truth of the matter is recommendations have been made. The ad hoc parliamentary report is also carrying our own recommendations and our own report. But if you listen very well from what they're saying the whole report, that is the ad hoc committee report, the Senate committee, the House of Assembly report, are now going to be taken to the head of state. And it is up to the head of state to decide on what to do. But what is on the ground is there are three possibilities that might take place. The first one is to use the current report in its flaws to go ahead with elections, but that will be breaching the constitution of the country. So I don't know whether we should give them a benefit of doubt that they might not do it, since they claim to be the Second Republic, different from the First Republic. We know from the First Republic that they are going to do it anyway. Whether they are breaking the constitution or not, to them it was immaterial. But as they call themselves Second Republic, maybe they are going to take more considerate that we shouldn't break the constitution. So the current one is a no-go area, as he has explained. It has to, the recommendation is that it has to go back to ZEC. ZEC must do the right thing, consider everything that needs to be considered, and bring it back. And the second one is the 2007-8 delimitation report. Again, it has overstayed its tenure. I mean, it's now 15 years. It's supposed to be there only for 10 years, or work within the period of 10 years. It's now 15 years. Whether they are going to use that, it's again breaking the constitution, section 161, they will be breaking. So it's up to Zimbabweans to see whether the Second Republic is going to break that constitutional right of Zimbabweans by going to elections using that or not. Then there's the last one, which is enshrined in the Constitution. I think is it Section 38 or 238? That talks to the fact that in such circumstances, the head of state might take the route of deviation or asking for a country to extend the elections period. But that has got its own constitutional routes that it has to take. One, he has to subject that to the people of Zimbabwe through a referendum, a yes and no question asked. If the people of Zimbabwe says yes, we want to extend the elections, then it will go. If they say no, it becomes a problem for the head of state, because already we've stated that these two, yes, they can do it but they are unconstitutional. The only constitutional way is to subject the country into that. So we don't know what the head of state or the sitting government, we don't know which route they are going to take, but we are very much aware of the unconstitutionalism or unconstitutional way of the other two, that the implications that they will give to the country or to the constitution itself. The other one is up to the people or the head of state to say, can we do this?
Possibly just to summarize what the chairman said, we can't jump the gun as well. ZEC is there to receive its own report from the president, from the head of state. We want to say, once ZEC receives the report from the head of state, there should be an person to tell us how long do they need. How much time do they need for them to produce, to come up with the most acceptable or the most appropriate or acceptable report with the most appropriate boundaries. So ZEC will actually give an indication of whether they can do it within the remaining period of time or not. If they can't, then people will start to think about that when ZEC says we can't finish this within the given period of remaining period of time before elections.
But anyway, our position as a party, we hope that ZEC is going to be able to complete their work, to complete their report in a very reasonable time for us to go for elections.